Thank you all for coming. Please note no flash photography, and if you could all put your mobile phones on silent. Richard Matthew Stallman graduated from Harvard with a BA in physics. He worked as a hacker in MIT's AI lab and eventually evolved into not just a software developer but also a software freedom activist. He is, in his own words, reputedly intelligent with unusual interests in politics, science, music, and dance. In 1983, he announced the project to develop the GNU operating system. It is meant to be entirely free software, and he has been the project leader ever since. GNU is special because everyone has the freedom to copy and redistribute it, as well as to make changes large or small. The GNU Linux system, which is basically the GNU operating system with the Linux kernel added, is now used in millions, tens of millions of computers today. I'm sure some of you will be familiar with it because of CS 101. Stallman, in his own words, is a 56-year-old atheist white man, single, with a 26-year-old child, the free software movement. And that is the subject of today's talk. The free software movement campaigns for computer users' freedom to cooperate and to control their own computing. Having received the ACM Grace Hopper Award, a MacArthur Foundation Fellowship, the Electronic Frontier Foundation's Pioneer Award, and the Technica Award, as well as several honorary doctorates, we are very proud to welcome you all to hear Richard Stallman. If you could accept the bouquet.
Okay, sure. I always like it when people give me flowers. So, if you are recording the speech in audio or video, there are just two things I'd like you to agree to. First of all, if you distribute it, please distribute it in a format that's friendly to free software. That means either an OGG format or WebM. Don't distribute it in Flash. Don't put it on YouTube. Flash is not friendly to free software, and it would be horribly sad to invite people to watch my talk by installing non-free software. You don't want to do that. And the other thing is, please put the Creative Commons no derivatives license on it. That's what I use for my statements of opinion, which is what this is. What is free software? Free software is software that respects the user's freedom and the social solidarity of the user's community. So it's free as in freedom, not as in price. We don't mean zero price. We're not talking about price at all. So think of free speech, not free beer, to understand the term free software. Sometimes people describe it as swatantra or mukt. To clarify, when a program is not free, we call it proprietary software, non-free software, user subjugating software. Because proprietary software, sorry, what? I can't hear you at all. Please raise your hands if you cannot hear me. Try now. Raise your hands if you cannot hear me. Please raise your hands if you didn't hear the first part of my speech. Uh-oh, I'll have to repeat it. That's a lot of people. Free software, sorry to bore the rest of you, but this is really important, so if you hear it twice, maybe it's worth it. Free software means software that respects the user's freedom and the social solidarity of the user's community. It's free as in freedom. We're not talking about price. So sometimes we call it Swatantra or Mukt software to help people understand just what we mean when we say free. We also say, think of free speech, not free beer. When software is not free, we call it proprietary software, non-free software, user-subjugating software. Because a proprietary program keeps the users divided and helpless. Divided because they're forbidden to redistribute it to each other, and helpless because they don't have the source code, so they can't change it. They can't even study what it really does. And often these programs are designed to be malicious. So non-free software is a system of digital colonization. The colonial powers are not countries, they're companies. But that doesn't make much difference for the colonized victims who use the proprietary software. But it's very easy to say, respect your freedom, I believe in freedom. What precisely does that mean? I had better be more specific. A program is free software if you, the user, have the 4 essential freedoms. Freedom 0 is the freedom to run the program as you wish. Freedom 1 is the freedom to study the source code and change it to make the program do your computing as you wish. Freedom 2 is the freedom to help others, the freedom to redistribute exact copies of the program when you wish. And freedom 3 is the freedom to contribute to your community, the freedom to distribute copies of your modified versions, supposing you have made some, when you wish. So we believe every user is entitled to these 4 freedoms. And if a program comes with these 4 freedoms, then it's free software, because the social system of using the program is an ethical system, one that respects freedom and community. But if one of these freedoms is missing or insufficient, then the program is proprietary software, because it imposes an unethical social system on its users. So this is not a question of how well the program runs, or what job it does, or how the code works. It's not a technical question at all. It's an ethical, social, and political question about what freedom you have to control your technology and work with others. The use of a free program in society is development, because free software is knowledge that everyone's free to understand, maintain, adapt, and extend. But proprietary software's use is not development, it's dependence, it's subjection. So the use of proprietary software in society is a problem, not a solution. It's a problem that we aim to get rid of. To develop a free program is a contribution to society, more or less. How much of a contribution, that depends on all the details. But developing a proprietary program is not a contribution, it's a power grab, an attempt to subjugate others. If the program has some convenient features, those are the bait for the trap. They are meant to lure users into surrendering their freedom by becoming users of the program. So attractive features do not excuse a proprietary program, they only make it more dangerous to our freedom. After all, if everybody thought it was useless, it wouldn't be much of a threat. So, if you have the choice to develop a proprietary program or do nothing at all, it's better to do nothing at all, because that way you don't do any harm. And thus, the goal of the free software movement is that all software be free so that all software users can be free. But why are these four freedoms essential? Why define free software this way? Each freedom has a reason. Freedom 2, the freedom to help others, the freedom to redistribute exact copies, is essential on fundamental moral grounds, so that you can live an upright life as a good member of your community. If you use a program that lacks freedom 2, you are in danger of falling into a moral dilemma at any moment. Whenever your friend says, "That program is nice, could I have a copy?" in that moment, you will face a choice between two evils. One evil is to give your friend a copy and violate the license of the program. The other evil is to refuse your friend a copy and comply with the license of the program. If you are in this dilemma, you ought to choose the lesser evil, which is to give your friend a copy and violate the license of the program. What makes this the lesser evil? Well, if you can't avoid doing wrong to somebody or other, it's better, or at least less bad, to do wrong to somebody who deserves it because he has done wrong. We can assume that your friend is a good member of your community, and normally deserves your cooperation. But the developer of the proprietary software has deliberately attacked the social solidarity of your community, deliberately tried to divide people. So if you're stuck with doing wrong to one or the other, do it to the developer. But being the lesser evil does not make it good. It's never good to make an agreement and break it. Not even with agreements like this one that are inherently evil, so that keeping them is worse than breaking them. Still, breaking them is not good. And if you give your friend a copy, what will she have? She will have an unauthorized copy of a proprietary program, and that's something rather nasty, almost as nasty as an authorized copy. So, when you have fully understood this dilemma, what should you really do? You should make sure you are never in it. I know two ways. One is, don't have any friends. That's what proprietary software developers have in mind for you. The other method, my method, is reject that software. Reject all software that doesn't have freedom too. So when someone offers me a program without freedom too, no matter how convenient it might be, I say, my conscience does not permit me to accept those conditions, so take your nasty program out of here. And that's what you should do too. Reject software that divides you from other people. And reject also the propaganda terms that the proprietary developers use to demonize the practice of helping others, of cooperation in society. Terms like pirate. When they call people who share and cooperate pirates, what are they saying? They want to make us assume, preferably without question, that helping others is the moral equivalent of sailing around to attack people. Well, ethically speaking, nothing could be more false than that, because sailing around to attack people is very bad, but helping others is good. So we shouldn't call them by the same word. Therefore, when people ask me what I think of piracy, I respond, attacking ships is very bad. And if they ask me what I think of software piracy or music piracy, as I say, as far as I know, pirates, when they attack, don't do it using computers or by playing instruments badly and very loud. Instead, they use arms. So their piracy is not software piracy or music piracy, it's just piracy. But you get the point. I very sharply refuse to accept the meaning that they intended for the word, and thus demonstrate my rejection of that usage. See, that's what they try to do. They use propaganda terms and they hope that you'll follow them without noticing. So you've got to be on the lookout and avoid repeating those propaganda terms in your response. So that's the reason for freedom too, the freedom to help others, the freedom to redistribute exact copies when you wish. Essential on fundamental moral grounds. Freedom 0, the freedom to run the program as you wish, is essential for a different reason, so you can control your computing. Many proprietary programs restrict in their licenses the use of the authorized copies. So if they deign to let you have a copy, they still control what you can do with it. And this is not control of your computing. One program I heard of for managing websites forbids in its license using it to publish anything that criticizes the developer. In this case, proprietary software literally takes away your freedom of speech. Obviously, if you can't even freely use your copy, you don't control your computing, so freedom 0 is essential. But it's not enough, because that just means you're free to either do or not do whatever the code is already set up to do. Which means the developer continues imposing his decisions on you, not through the license if you have freedom 0, but instead through the code itself. So, in order to have control of your computing, you also need freedom 1. The freedom to study the source code and change it to make the program do what you wish, instead of what they wish. This way, you decide what will happen in your computing. If you don't have freedom 1, you can't even tell what the program is doing. And many of these programs have malicious features, designed to do things like spy on the user, restrict the user. There are even backdoors to abuse the user. And this is not rare. It's not like the danger you might get robbed if you go for a walk. That happens once in a while. It doesn't happen most days. But being the victim of malicious features happens to most of the users of proprietary software every day. Because the most common proprietary programs have malicious features. For instance, one example of a proprietary program that has all 3 of those kinds of malicious features that you may have heard of is called Microsoft Windows. People have found spy features. Of course, we know Windows is designed to support digital handcuffs, DRM, digital restrictions management, the features that restrict what the users can do with the files in their own computer. And it also has backdoors. For instance, there's a backdoor in Windows that allows Microsoft to forcibly impose changes in software. And Microsoft has the power to change any program in the machine without asking permission of the theoretical supposed owner of the machine. I say supposed owner because once Microsoft has Windows running in the machine, Microsoft has owned that machine. So any malicious feature that is not in Windows today could be put in tomorrow. Then there's Windows Media Player. Windows Media Player, I'm told, sends reports of what the user listens to or watches. And so does Real Player. I don't know if anyone still uses Real Player, but that's what it did. And then there's the Macintosh, which implements digital handcuffs. And the newer Apple products, which are really nasty, the iMoan and the iPad. With these products, Apple has claimed the power to dictate which applications the user can install, because the user can only get applications from Apple's App Store. And there's a back door with which Apple can remotely delete applications. If Apple approved a certain application 6 months ago, but today it changes its mind, it can send commands telling the iMoans and iPads to delete that application. So Apple is a pioneer in maliciousness. Then there's the Adobe Flash Player, which has digital handcuffs and a surveillance feature which we call super cookies. They work more or less like browser cookies, except that browsers typically allow users to examine them and control them, and the Adobe Flash Player keeps them totally hidden and gives the user no say at all. It's designed to allow various websites to communicate with each other through the user's machine, cross-identify the user, and then keep track of the user. So, if you have made the mistake of installing Adobe's Flash Player, get rid of it as fast as you can. And then there is the Amazon swindle. An e-book reader. What's an e-book? Literally speaking, an e-book is a book in digital form. I don't see anything bad about that. But in practice, what e-books usually mean is books in digital form designed to take away your freedom, the traditional freedom of book readers. For instance, there's the freedom to buy a book anonymously, paying cash, which is the only way I ever do it. But you can't buy a book for the Amazon swindle from Amazon paying cash, and most books are not available from any place else. Amazon makes the users identify themselves. So Amazon has a list of all the books each customer has ever bought. And that list is so dangerous to human rights, it must not be allowed to exist anywhere. And then there's the freedom to give, lend, or sell a book to someone else. But you can't do that with the swindle because of the digital restrictions management features. And also, because they don't believe in private property, they say they don't sell you the book, they just license it to you. They don't believe you should be allowed to own any books. And then there's the freedom to keep the book for as long as you wish. And to eliminate that freedom, the swindle has a back door that allows Amazon to remotely delete books. We found out about this in 2009 because Amazon used it in a spectacular fashion, deleting thousands of copies of a particular book. And the book with which Amazon demonstrated the Orwellian nature of its product was 1984 by George Orwell. If I were writing this as fiction, I wouldn't dare make that up. People would say, it's unbelievable, but this is what they actually did. Well, there was a lot of criticism, so Amazon said, we won't delete books again unless the government tells us to. That's real comforting, I'm sure. Their name for this product is the Kindle. Kindle means to start a fire. Evidently, this is designed to burn our books. So you should never use any of these things because you should never accept any product designed to take away your freedom. Whatever it's going to give you is not as important as your freedom. Well, these are some common examples, and these are the most commonly used non-free programs. But there are thousands more, and I don't know what they do. I don't know if they have malicious features. There's no way we can tell. We can't study their source code to check them. So I suppose some of them have malicious features and others don't. But we can't tell which ones do and which ones don't. So we have to look at each one of them as potentially malicious. But there is something I can say about all those programs. Their developers are humans, so they make mistakes. The code of those programs has bugs. And the user of a program without Freedom 1 is just as helpless facing an accidental bug as facing an intentional malicious feature. If you use a program that lacks Freedom 1, you are a prisoner of the software you use. Now, we, the developers of free software, are also human, so we make mistakes too. The code of our free programs has bugs too. But if you find a bug in our free software, or anything in the code you don't like, you are free to change it, because we did not make you a prisoner. We can't be perfect. We can respect your freedom. So Freedom 1 is essential. The freedom to study and change the source code, to make the program do your computing as you wish. But it's not enough, because that's the freedom to personally study and change the source code, or within one organization. And that's not enough because there are millions of users that don't know how to program. They can't exercise this freedom, at least not directly. But even for programmers like me, it's not enough because we're busy doing other things. And there's so much software in the world, in fact there's so much free software already, that no user is capable of personally studying and mastering the source code of all the programs he uses, or personally implementing all the changes he might wish. That's more work than any one human being can do. So the only way we can fully exercise control over our computing is to do it working together, cooperating, and for that we need Freedom 3. The freedom to contribute to the community, to distribute copies of your modified versions when you wish. With that, we can work together, because it's enough to develop an improved version once, and if the developers release this to the public, then we can all install it. And we don't have to write it for ourselves, each one of us. We don't have to write it 1,000,000 times over and over again. It's enough to write it once. So Freedom 3 is also essential. And that's all 4. So all users get the benefits of the 4 freedoms. Every user can exercise freedoms 0 and 2. The freedom to run the program as you wish and to redistribute exact copies, because you don't need to program to do those things. Non-programmers can do them. Freedoms 1 and 3, the freedom to study and change the source code and then optionally distribute copies of your version when you wish, these entail programming. So any given user is more or less capable of doing these things according to how much she knows how to program. And it's true, there are many people who don't learn to program and can't directly do these things. They can't directly exercise freedoms 1 and 3. But when others who are programmers exercise them, and when they release their modified versions, then everybody gets to install them or not as he chooses. So we all get the benefit of living in a society where everyone has these 4 freedoms. And the 4 freedoms together give us democracy. You see, a free program develops democratically under the control of its users. Every user is free to participate in society's decision about the future of the program as much or as little as she wishes, because that decision is simply the sum total of all the decisions of the users for what to do with the program. By contrast, a proprietary program develops under the dictatorship of its owner. The owner has total control over what the program does and what it won't do. So this program operates as an instrument to give that owner power over the users, to subjugate them. So that he can then order them around, exploit them, and abuse them. With software, there are just 2 possibilities. Either the users control the program, or the program controls the users. With free software, the users control the program. With proprietary software, the program controls the users, and the owner controls the program, so the owner has unjust power over the users. And this unjust power is what we are working to eliminate. So society has a choice. On one side, we have individual freedom, social solidarity, and democracy. On the other, dictatorship by some colonial power corporation. Society must choose free software and reject proprietary software. So the ultimate aim of the free software movement is the liberation of cyberspace and all of its inhabitants. We invite you and urge you to escape from proprietary software, to come and live with us in the free world. Join us in freedom. I started the free software movement in 1983. I wanted to be able to use computers in freedom, which was impossible. The computer won't do anything without an operating system. And in 1983, all operating systems for modern computers were proprietary. So if you bought a new computer, before you could actually do anything with it, you had to have a non-free operating system installed, and there went your freedom. So what can I do about that? I was one man, not particularly famous outside of the users of the editor Emacs, and only a few people agreed with me. So it didn't look like there was much hope to get rid of this problem with a classical political movement where we would protest and send letters to politicians. And besides, I had no experience doing that. I was not a political activist. I was an operating system developer. But as an operating system developer, that meant there was another way I could get rid of this problem. All I had to do was write an operating system, and then being the author, I'd be able to legally make it free, and then everybody would be able to use computers in freedom by running my system. So I could eliminate this injustice by doing technical work in my own field. So I was aware of an injustice that most people didn't recognize as an injustice. I had the skills necessary to try to correct the injustice, and it looked like nobody else was going to try it, if not me. That meant I had been elected by circumstances to do this work. It was my duty. It's as if you see somebody drowning and you know how to swim and there's no one else around and it's not Bush, Then you have a moral duty to save this person. Well, perhaps that statement is too strong. Perhaps we could identify other people about who, like maybe Cheney and Rumsfeld and Ashcroft and Tony Blair and a bunch of other evil politicians, about whom I shouldn't make the claim that you have a duty to save them. But I don't need to resolve these questions because I don't know how to swim. However, in the real case that happened, the work to be done was not swimming, it was writing lots of software. And that I knew how to do. So I decided I would develop a free software operating system or die trying. Of old age, that is. Because at the time, the free software movement that I was starting had no active enemies. Of the people I told the idea to, a lot of them didn't agree with it, but they saw no need to bother trying to stop me. They were sure the job was so big I could never finish it. Well, I saw that the job was big. And I couldn't have said, I am certain that this system will eventually work. But I realized also that failure was not an option. Because without a free operating system, no one using computers would ever have freedom. So, I decided to develop a free software operating system. I decided to recruit others to join and help to get it done sooner. I decided to follow the design of Unix to make a portable system capable of running on different kinds of computers made by different companies. Because Unix was a portable system that actually succeeded in doing this. I figured by following the basic design of Unix, I'd have a good chance of succeeding in making another portable system. And then I decided to make it upward compatible with Unix, which means implement the same commands, so that the people who already knew how to use Unix would be able to use my system without having to learn anything new, so that they find it easy to switch. And then I gave it the name GNU, which is a joke. GNU, and that's the right way to pronounce it, is a recursive acronym. It stands for GNU's Not Unix. Of course, programmers always love jokes about recursion. And besides, there was a custom already in the hacker community of, well, when you write a program that's similar to and inspired by some other program, you can give your program a name which is a recursive acronym saying that your program is not the other one. It's a humorous way of giving credit. So, for instance, there were many Tico text editors, and they were called something or other Tico. And then somebody wrote one and called it Tint, for Tint is not Tico. And then in 1976, I wrote the first Emacs editor. And there were lots of imitations, and some were called something or other Emacs, which is a sort of obvious kind of name, but not particularly funny. However, there was also Fine for Fine is not Emacs, and Sign for Sign is not Emacs, and Ina for Ina is not Emacs, and Mince for Mince is not complete Emacs. And version 2 of Ina was called Zwei, for Zwei was Ina initially. So that was the background. Of course, I had to look for a recursive acronym name, but when I tried the usual 4-letter model, I ran into a problem. None of those combinations was a word. It would be blank I-N-U. Well, in English, none of them is a word. And if it doesn't have another meaning, it's not funny. So what could I do? I had the idea to make a contraction to get rid of the I. Instead of something is not Unix, it would be something's not Unix, blank NU. So, being an engineer, I systematically tried every initial. Enu, GNU, GNU, Enu, FNU, GNU. Well, GNU is the most humor-charged word in the English language, used in countless wordplays, because according to the dictionary, the G is silent, and it's pronounced new. So anytime you want to write the word new, you can spell it G-N-U and you've got a joke. Perhaps not a very good joke, but there are lots of them. So as soon as people see that word, they're almost ready to laugh already. So given a specific, meaningful reason to use that as the name of a programming project, I couldn't resist. However, when it's the name of our system, please do not follow the dictionary. Please pronounce it GNU. If you pronounce it new, you'll get people confused. You see, if you say the new operating system, because we've been working on it for over 26 years. And we've been using it for 18 years. It's not new anymore. But it still is GNU, and it will always be GNU. Don't say GNU, that's too slow, it'll bore people. You don't want to say it. Say GNU. There's another pronunciation error you need to avoid. Don't pronounce the name like Linux, because it's GNU. Linux is something else. But in fact, most people who talk about the GNU system make that error. They call it Linux. They say, I'm a Linux user, and what they really mean is they're using the GNU system. How did this strange error happen? Well, during the 80s, our task was to find or make all the hundreds of components needed for a Unix-like system. In 1992, we had just about the whole system. But one major essential component was missing. That component was the kernel. That's the part of the operating system that allocates the machine's resources to all the other programs. And we were working on a kernel, which we started in 1990, but it wasn't working yet. And then Mr. Torvalds, who had a non-free kernel called Linux, made it free software. That was in 1992. So his kernel, together with the almost complete GNU system, made a complete free system, which was basically GNU, but also contained Linux. So a good name for that is the GNU/Linux system. If you want to distinguish it from just the GNU system, after all, it has one component that's different. But the people who made this combination, they were so focused on this one piece Linux that they thought of all the rest as a small add-on. And so they started calling this combination the Linux system, and they misled other people, and they misled other people, and that's how it is that millions of people today use this variant of the GNU system, and they don't know it. They think they're using Linux. They think the whole system is Linux, and that it was started by Mr. Torvalds in 1991, which is not true. So I ask you, please, when you talk about this system, don't ever call it Linux. Please call it GNU/Linux or GNU plus Linux, and give us equal mention.